this has been a massive ongoing thing on Twitter. I've had this multi-day fights about this multiple times.
You don't back down from a fight on Twitter, I've
No,
seen.
I don't.
You don't.
No,
I
I
must see
don't.
like 13 tweets in a row from Toure.
And we had a badass one today about Tyler Perry, but we're going to get into that later.
Oh, how exciting. Oh, okay. Well, what's this one?
When you go out to dinner,
okay,
how much do you tip?
Oh, well, I'm obsessive about it. It's a big problem for me.
What do you mean it's a problem?
Big problem for me. A good problem, but an ongoing issue in that I'm hyper aware that I'm a public figure. Hyper aware of that. And I used to assume that no one knew who I was. And then what would happen was I would assume all night they didn't know who I was. And then some issue or trigger at the last minute would indicate they definitely did. And then I would be aware of the fact that I need to think about my behavior right now because these people can report on my behavior. And I'm very kind to everybody.
Right.
But I've been growing up poor. I'm always torn between wanting to be very generous because I was a waitress and being aware of the fact that I was poor my whole life and not wanting to, like, not being comfortable with over tipping. Like I'm a bajillionaire, so
you're not comfortable with over tipping because of where you came from.
Exactly, because I grew up poor, and so I'm very aware of like the value of money. I tend to over tip anyway.
25%.
20 is always the baseline. I've never tipped less than 20%.
You must tip 20%. Period.
Many people tip 20 below, before tax or 15 to 18, and most of the people I grew up with who are working class tip 15 to 18.
15% is barely acceptable.
See, I feel like most people think that 15 to 18 is totally okay.
15% is barely acceptable. Okay, and the difference between 18 and 20 is often like $1.
Right. So why not go to 20?
Just give her the 20%.
I always tip 20 unless someone enraged me, and then they get 18.
10% or less, you cannot go back to the restaurant.
Ever
Period.
Again. Ever. Again. That's a statement.
They will not forget. They will spit in your food, and you deserve it.
Right.
And people throw out this canard. What about bad service?
Right.
And I'm like, you know what? I struggle to think through 15 some years of being, you know, an adult-ish person and eating in decent restaurants. And I'm not even talking about going to Nobu all the time.
Right.
I'm talking about just eating in solid restaurants.
Right.
And to get what I would actually legitimately
qualify as bad service. I've had terrible service. Even then, I've still
20%.
But I still have. But I shouldn't have.
You
shouldn't have.
No, you should. And here's the thing, right? You were a waitress, right? I worked in the restaurant industry. If you have a problem, don't do the passive-aggressive thing of docking the tip. Call a manager and speak to the manager, and the manager will always be nice and cool and be like, you know, I'm hearing you, and they're never going to confront you like you're wrong. And, you know, I mean, a lot of people want to use the bullshit of like, well, I didn't get refill on water. So we're down to 15%. I didn't get bread. They took me 10 minutes for them to come over.
My 70-year-old grandmother found a shard of glass in her ice cream. Ouch. She didn't find it in the bowl. She found it in her mouth.
Scary.
And when we called over the manager, they said, hey, you know, that happens. Yeah.
But, okay, that's not the waiter's fault.
No, and I still
tipped. That's the kitchen's fault.
18%, and I felt like the manager should have comped
the entire meal.
The entire meal. And what they did was they took the $3 dessert, or maybe it was like a $5
shard of glass.
And it was like a damage doing one, not a little one, like a large.
It's the kitchen's fault that happened.
I agree.
And the manager was a jerk and ineffective in the situation. The waiter didn't knowingly do anything wrong.
But when we called the waiter, she wasn't like, it was really about her behavior and not about what she did. She should have come up, oh my God, that's terrible.
Yeah.
I can't believe that happened. No, she was like, ugh. Well, and it's like, well, when we talked to your manager, the manager came over and they were like, well, you know, it happens. And I was like, do you think we walk around with a pocket full of fucking glass and we drop it into every day? Like, what is happening?
And that was ice cream.
Right? And that was an occasion where they didn't have to comp the entire meal, but comping the dessert, which she didn't eat anyway, was unacceptable.
That's bad.
Yeah,
that was bad. Look, I'm not saying that bad service does not exist.
I know what you want to get to.
Unless you are talking to the manager, then I don't want to hear about your bad service. Give them 20%, because most of the time they are not alone. They have to tip out to other people.
Usually it's
they
pooled.
don't make money.
Usually, you're right about that. It's pooled between everybody who's working there.
And I reject this concept of like, well, why should I pay her salary? Well, the restaurant
here's the thing.
should.
I agree with that, but that's the condition we're under. Because when you go to Europe, where people make a living wage, where they respect service people, and they make a basic living wage without tips. Yeah. Which is how it should be here. Well, when I was waitress, I made $2.20 an hour. That is fucking bullshit.
Yeah, but you get tipped. I mean, the profit margins in restaurants are very low. And most restaurants close in under 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. So
maybe they should have made better food.
If we shifted the burden of paying to the restaurant, then the prices, it would be baked into the prices. The food would be a lot more expensive. And a lot of people don't understand this concept. If you don't have enough to tip, then you don't have enough to eat at that restaurant. And that's like shocking people. People are like, well, it's not a law. I don't have to. But you know what?
That's true. It's not, but it's convention.
It's not a law. It is a social law. And it is a moral law. And it is ethical. And it is an ethical violation to not tip.
I have two questions for you. The first of it all is, do they have, they don't have, I don't think they have, but I'm going to ask you because you live here. In San Francisco, they add a certain amount to every bill to cover medical insurance for staff.
Not that I know.
So it's built in. You get like an extra percentage of your bill. They're like, and this is the amount we're charging you so that our staff can have health insurance. And it's non-negotiable.
Of course it isn't.
And then the second question I have for you is, so I'm assuming they don't have that in New York. I'm happy to pay that. That's great. Sure. It's transparent. Yeah. We would like to give our people a living wage and an opportunity. Do you have something in your eye?
No, my eyelashes are suddenly feel all tangled
attached to your eyeballs.
And because of the podcast, I thought that I could just futz with it and get away with it, but you called it out. So
no, I was worried about you.
Make it all visual.
This is a compassionate space, my podcast. Nice. So then the second question is, do you feel anxious / compelled about the way you tip because you're black? Which I do.
It is definitely a racial issue. I definitely see the thing that black people go through of like, the wait staff waiters definitely have that stereotype that black people don't tip.
Oh, it's clear.
I've heard it from many, many servers of all races, right? So that's in the service industry that
by the way, my cheapest friend is white. My cheapest, poorest tipping friend is white.
I mean, it's certainly not something you can generalize about us, but they are generalizing that about us. So they may approach us with like an attitude or some expectation of giving us lesser service because they're not going to get tipped. Mm-hmm. And we feel that even if they don't outwardly do anything that you can point to.
Circle,
so we are like, well, I'm not tipping that bitch because she had a fucking attitude.
Right.
And the bitch came over like, well, I'm not going to give you my heart because you're not going to tip me. Well, you didn't know that. Well, you didn't know that. Well, who's first, the chicken or the egg? I don't know. Do I tip 20% always because I'm black? No, because I know that it's right.
Right.
And because I did that job and I have a respect for what they go through. Mm-hmm. And because it's a lot easier mathematically to get to than 18%.
I feel I tip 100%, maybe 1, 2, 3 out of guilt. If being black comes into it, it's number 4. Yeah. It's I waitress, I know how hard it is. Yeah. I waitress, I know how many people get stiffed. I was poor, and I respect people who are earning a living on their backs. And then number 4 might be I tip to make a point. I mean, no, number 5, because number 4 is I tip because I'm a public figure, and I don't want people to think I'm cheaper reported in the news, which is really a selfish reason to tip properly. But, and then number 5 is I tip because I don't.
There's all kind of blogs, shitty waitress, angry waitress, whatever, that will tell the world